Hey guys, so in this video we are going to go over probably the most frequently asked question, and that is going to be how to get your Divine Blessing set up. And we're going to go over I guess some armor stacker specific setups, like different setups that you need to get this going on different build setups, so like with the Mage Blood, without a Mage Blood, and that kind of stuff. And I think this video deserved its own video because, well, first of all, it is something that people get stuck on the most, and it is something that's not really armor stacker specific, so you can actually do this Divine Blessing thing on pretty much any kind of build, and there are a lot of people already using this. I think the most common way that people do it is to use like Eldritch Battery and that kind of stuff to cast the aura with their energy shield, because if we look at the Divine Blessing gem, you can buy it from Lily actually. So Divine Blessing, it basically changes your aura to be a temporary aura that you cast with mana, and it does end up costing quite a bit of mana. So see, normally we do have our auras up here that you just cast normally, but with Divine Blessing, so if we cast our Divine Blessing aura, you can see that we gain this temporary aura up here for about 14 per 2 seconds. Now you can increase this duration up to like 18 seconds with an aura mastery, so non-curse aura skills have 50% increased duration, or you can link your aura to an increased duration support, and that'll increase the duration so you don't have to, cast it all the time. Okay, TLDR, basically for Mage Blood, you run Inspiration, you run a Mage Blood flask with reduced mana cost of skills, and then you have to get 10% reduced mana cost of skills from somewhere. So either you get it on your rings, you get it on the passive tree, or you get it with rare jewels, or you get it with something like a Militant Faith. So for non-Mage Blood setups, TLDR, Inspiration, then you have to use a flask with 25% reduced mana cost of skills. You can only cast your Divine Blessing when you have this flask active, so choose one that doesn't use a lot of charges, like an elemental flask, and try to gain 3 charges when hit. Then you're gonna need to get at least another 35% reduced mana cost of skills from the passive tree or from your rings, like we mentioned with the 5% reduced mana cost of skills craft. So you either get that on your rings, maybe you can actually even get it on the amulet too, I think. So either you get it on the rings, you get it with jewels, or you get it on the passive tree and the mana mastery for 10% reduced mana cost of skills. Well, a combination of all 3 of those, and then you have your 100% or 99% reduced mana cost of your Divine Blessing, and you can actually start to use it. So that's the TLDR. If you want to see me showing it visually on the tree, then you can continue watching the video. So let's get into the first way that you're going to set this aura up, because it does cost quite a bit of mana. So, alright, so the goal of running this Divine Blessing setup is going to be to reduce the mana cost of the skill, your blessing skill, all the way down to at least 99%. You can get away with 99%. Then the aura will cost maybe like 20 mana, 10 mana, and that's very manageable. But in most cases, you'll probably try to get it down to 100%, which is pretty easy. So the way we do this is, first of all, there is this Inspiration support. So Inspiration support will give you 39%, and I think at a 2120 this goes up to 40. So we've got 39% from our Inspiration, and then what you're going to do is, so on a Mage Blood setup, it's very easy to actually get your Divine Blessing going, and all you do pretty much is you link your Inspiration support to the aura that you're casting with Divine Blessing. So that's 39 or I guess 40%, 39, 40% reduced mana cost of the skill. And then you get a flask with 25% reduced mana cost of skills with the increased effect prefix, and then the 70% increased effect enchant. So you can do the enchant with the, what are these, enkindling orbs. And so what is that going to be? So that's 95% increased effect times 25 plus 25 is, so it's about 48%. So 48, and then plus our 40% we got from Inspiration, so that's 88% reduced. That means we need another 11% somewhere. So where can we get this 11%? Well, you can actually get it on rings, right? So there is a craft you can do. So there is 5% reduced mana cost of skills you can craft as a prefix on your rings. So if you have 2 rings, rare rings, you can craft 5%, so that's 10. And that leaves a 1% mana cost of your Divine Blessing, and then pretty much it's going to be like, what, 10, 20 mana. So, and then you can actually start to use it. So what if you are using unique rings? Well, how do you do this? So there's a couple ways you can do this. And first of all is to get there is some jewels that will have 5% reduced mana cost of skills that you can roll on, you know, just like Viridian jewels or Cobalt jewels and that kind of stuff. So you just get 2 of those, and that pretty much solves your mana. Okay, so another thing you can do is there is a mana mastery for 10% reduced mana cost of skills. So if you can't get jewels or craft the reduced mana cost on your rings, then what you can do is you can then just go grab a mana mastery. There's quite a few of them on the tree. See, there's one here, one here. A lot of them around the Scion area, which makes it very easy. There's some down here on the Duelist area. And there's a couple ones up here. There's one up here near the Witch area. And one over here on Templar. So it is very accessible. It will cost you some points on the tree, but considering how powerful a free 50% aura can be, I think it is very worth it. So that's one way you can do it. So there's also a on some of these mana masteries, there are skills like Dreamer, which gives you 10% reduced mana cost of skills, and the small nodes are giving you 5, so you can actually come get these. So yeah, there are a few ways on the passive tree to get it, but generally, the way you do it is with Inspiration, and then with the Flask, the Mageblood Flask, and then you get the rest on either your rings, your jewels, or the passive tree. Okay, so one other way to reduce the mana cost of your skills is with this Militant Faith. So Militant Faith can roll one of these mods that says 1% reduced mana cost of skills per 10 devotion. So you can actually get quite a lot of devotion, like say on something like Scion, or even on Witch too. There is, I think on Poison Spark we used to do the same kind of thing, where you get a Militant Faith, and then you get a Unnatural Instinct, and the Unnatural Instinct basically allocates all the small passives, giving you a lot of devotion. See, my character has 170 devotion, and if we get rid of this Unnatural Instinct, you see we're going all the way down to 95. So with this jewel just as it is in this one spot, I guess for my character, right, I'm getting 9% reduced mana cost of skills. And then with the Unnatural Instinct, you go all the way up to 17% reduced mana cost of skills. So that's more than enough to actually allow us to cast the aura without having to get any reduced mana cost crafts on our gear, or taking anything on the passive tree, or any kind of jewels or anything. So Inspiration, Mageblood Flask, Militant Faith is a very, very nice way to do it. So what do you do if you don't have a Mageblood? Well, the setup is going to be pretty much the same, and we're going to link our aura that is linked to the Divine Blessing with Inspiration. Right, so we got our Inspiration, and then so that's going to be 39%. So let's get the calculator out again. So 39%. Okay, and then what you're going to do is you're going to buy a flask with gain 3 charges when you're hit by an enemy, and preferably you want a flask that doesn't use a lot of charges. So I like to use the Ruby Flask or one of the elemental flasks, because they only use 20 charges and 50, so you have 22 uses of this. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but what you do is you can either craft it yourself or just buy these on trade. And then there is a unveil craft you can get for flasks. You get it by unveiling the Cinder Swallow Urn. Oh, it's over here. Okay, so it is up to 25% reduced mana cost of skills during effect. So either you craft it on yourself by unveiling the Cinder Swallow Urn until you get it, or you can actually go on TFT, and there's a lot of people who will just craft this onto you for free and just ask them to do a max roll and give them the currency needed to craft it, and they'll craft it for you. So you basically get a flask similar to the Mageblood one, but instead of having increased effect, you're going to have gain 3 charges when you're hit. So that's going to give you 25%. So let's add 25, so now we're at 64% reduced. Okay, so if you're wondering, well, what happens if you don't have any charges? Well, you know what's going to happen. And I've been running setups like this with the gain charges or hit to actually cast my Divine Blessing for I don't know how many leagues, for like over 5-6 leagues, right? And during that time, there's only been about 2 situations where I didn't have fast charges, and if you ever are in that situation, you just get hit a few times and you can actually cast your Divine Blessing. So it's very unlikely you're not going to have enough charges on your flask to actually cast your Divine Blessing. So if you're worried about that, it's not really that much of a concern as long as you're using one of these flasks that don't use a lot of charges. If you're using it on something like a Jade Flask, then you might run into the situation where you don't have flask charges a lot more frequently, but if you stick to one of these elemental flasks, it should not be a problem. Okay, so that's 64% reduced. So where do we get the rest of our mana reduction? So if you're playing on a Scion, this is very, very easy because what you can do is you come over here and then you get this node here, so mana regeneration and reduced mana cost. So that is 15% here, 10% here, and then 5 on the small node. And you take the mastery over here for 10% reduced mana cost of skills, so that's 25%. Okay, so now we're at 89%. So where do we get the rest? And the rest is just going to have to be on, well, either you run one of these Militant Faiths, right? So that's going to get you another 17%, or you get it like we mentioned before on the ring. So you can get 5% on the ring, 5% on the ring, so that's another 10%, right? And that brings you down to 99%. And that is good enough to cast your Divine Blessing. So if you can't get it on the rings, you're just going to have to either get it on jewels or find some other nodes on the passive tree or use something like the Militant Faith. Okay, well, what if you can't actually come over here? Well, there is some other reduced mana cost of skill nodes. So if you're playing near the Templar area, there is this over here. So this 3, 3, 3, 6. So this is also a good option. Then you'll have to probably take the Mana Mastery for another 10%, and that should get you over around 99%, so you can actually cast your aura. Alright, so there is some one other item that is sort of worth mentioning. I mean, I wouldn't really ever use this myself, but I thought it's kind of interesting. So there's 2 items. So first one is going to be the Honor Home Helmet, which gives you up to 20% reduced mana cost of skills. So this helmet is actually pretty bad. I mean, it does give you +2 level of Socket Gems, which is kind of cool. But other than that, Covenant is pretty much trash. But so this is kind of like a last resort, something you do, right? And then there also is the Wyrmsign Gloves, so you get 4% reduced mana cost per endurance charge. So if you have a lot of endurance charges, maybe on something like a Juggernaut, then this might be something that you could use. I mean, glove slots are a premium, I think, because, you know, with stuff like Calm Spirit and all that kind of stuff, but when you really need that extra reduced mana cost from somewhere and you just can't get it anywhere, well, this might be an option. Alright, so that's going to be it for this one, guys. Very short, and just covering the Divine Blessing setup so you guys can get it up and running, and I hope this was helpful to you guys, and I'll see you next time.
Hey, what's going on YouTube? Today I'm going to be showcasing a Doriani's prototype armor stacker build. This build is on the duelist class, and we're using the champion because of the inspirational ascendancy, as well as some other decent tanky ascendancies like fortification and unstoppable hero as a way to stack our armor even further for basically free. This is a life-based version of the build. Typically, when you see Doriani's prototype, it is an energy shield version. This version is not that. This build currently sits around 130 mil average DPS with a 250 mil top end for damage. It has 90% all res with negative 160% lightning res. So it's got a res cap on fire and cold, as well as chaos resistance of 75% on chaos. This build utilizes the fact that Doriani's prototype allows you to drop the lightning resistance of anything around you by 160%, and then uses Elemental Overload as a way to deal tons of lightning damage using the skill Smite. For a melee skill, this build actually has tremendous clear. Foul Smite is an insane skill. It holds a ton of clear value attached to it. And then the regular skill itself, because of its low mana cost and insanely easy to scale attack speed, becomes one of the most powerful melee skills in the game when you increase aura effect in particular, because it is an aura skill as much as it is an attack skill. So for the passive tree, we're basically focusing on getting an extra frenzy charge, and then we have Panopticon, of course, and then everything else in the tree is increased aura effect. We're using 3 1-passive voice cluster jewels, as well as a ton of introspection reservation cluster jewels, in order to stack our aura effect as high as we can, so that we can hit that 90% all res cap, but also to stack the damage on Smite. We're then using Dream Feather, a weapon that scales attack damage based on the amount of armor you have, and then we're multiplying our armor by using a keystone passive called Iron Reflexes, which allows us to stack both evasion and armor to gain all armor. We're then using increased aura effect on our rings in order to further scale grace, and then of course the non-curse aura on our tree is increasing both grace and determination to give us basically 2 million armor. With that 2 million armor, we have a dual wielding Dream Feather, so our attack damage is scaled to the moon. We're then running an Alpha Howl with double corrupted, socketed lightning, socketed aura in order to gain extra levels on grace, wrath, haste, and determination. We're also running in Ashes of the Stars to increase quality of our totems, in particular our Ancestral Protector to scale that attack speed, and then Blood Rage as well to scale attack speed. This helps with our single target bossing. We also increase Poacher's Mark, which is our mark on hit ability, with the quality increase. And then of course the reservation is extremely necessary because of how tight that this build is on reservation. Since it has no room for enlightened gems, we have to scale reservation the best we can. For the 6th link in particular, a new gem called Volatility came out, which gave us higher scaling on our lightning damage. Since lightning damage typically is between 1 and whatever number you scale it to, Volatility is really good with lightning skill gems because you can't really go less than 1, and you get 60% more on the top end, right? So then it just becomes, can you attack fast enough so that you can roll enough times on that high end of the lightning damage? Apart from that, anything that says you deal lucky hits is obviously insane. Of course, they changed the masteries of lightning so that we can no longer easily get Lucky Strike on lightning hits. So getting Lucky Strike would be kind of a setback. It'd be way too hard to get in this build. Besides that, we're running Multi-Strike Elemental Focus because we're not focusing on shocking the enemy, and then we have Inspiration and Elemental Damage with attacks. This leads to some of the best scaling on Smite that I've ever seen. Of course, that being said, build comes with downsides. Now, I want to preface that whenever I make a build, these builds are showcases. These builds are not cheap. I don't have a roadmap for these builds. It would take too much time and effort for me to go back and create budget versions of my build showcases, as it already takes me days to make the POBs for the builds at the top end, and then also takes me days to make the build in game. So hopefully you can understand why I don't make roadmaps of my builds or budget versions. Now, the downside of Armor Stacker with Doriani's is that you die almost immediately to lightning degen on the ground, and then also lightning hits. Definitely you can feel them. You can feel the lightning hits. It doesn't mean you can't survive a lightning hit, because trust me, you can survive a lightning hit, but lightning degen is like you need to react fast or you'll die. So there is that. Apart from all that, we're running a Progenesis Amethyst Flask. We can abuse Progenesis in this build because we are a life-based build. And then for our Mage Blood and Mage Blood Flasks, we have Armor while fortified on the Mage Blood. And then on the Flasks, we have increased armor, increased evasion on Jade and Basalt Flasks. And then we have a Stibnite Flask for 20% more evasion as well. We also have increased attack speed on our suffixes. Because of Smite's cost, mana cost, we actually don't need reduced mana cost on our flasks, and therefore we're able to run reduced effective curses instead. We're not running movement speed on the flasks because Leap Slam is already a skill that's going to beat out your movement speed no matter how much you scale it. Leap Slam is just since your attack speed is so high, your Leap Slam will just go nuts in this build. And apart from that, this build is very good at bossing as well as clearing. It's great in simulacrums. I've wave 30'd in simulacrums multiple times. I was farming simulacrums with this build. It felt very comfortable. This build rarely dies. It will only die to lightning degen. So you do have to watch out for things like Cirrus, for instance. I put a clip of me fighting Cirrus so you can see the ultimate demise of this build and see how, even though this build deals tons of damage, if a lightning degen is in its presence, you can kiss your luck goodbye because it's all over for you at that point. This build is not, it is doable, and the build will still function pretty much the same, except the defenses are less. For our jewels, it's pretty standard stuff. We're running an impossible escape in order to get to Whispers of Doom, as well as some increased aura effect. Very important part of the build. And then we have a Melding of the Flesh, which is giving us negative 80% elemental resistance, but also allowing us to make our cold resistance cap equal to our fire resistance cap, since we're stacking Purity of Fire on the build. We're trying to get as much minus resistance, so we also have a Thread of Hope with negative 20%, and Corrupted Blood cannot be inflicted on you, since we're trying to stack lightning desistance, so the opposite of resistance. We're trying to get our lightning resistance as low as we possibly can so that we can get that damage scaling and that damage penetration as high as we can. And because at around 0% lightning resistance, it stops mattering how much a lightning degen hurts. You will just basically die to it. You don't have to worry about that. Now, there has been some speculation on the idea of running Rakiata's Dance and Armor Stacker, and the issue I have with Rakiata's Dance is you're then not able to use Dream Feather, which is literally the whole point of the build. But I am curious to see if there are other builds that could use Doriani's Prototype with Rakiata's Dance and some resistance scaling in the positive direction. I don't think it would be a Smite Armor Stacker build in particular, but it...
I can't do this just yet.
Go with Maka's guidance.
You can never die. Why don't you test it?
I can't do this just yet.
Ja, das den riesigen Mund.
would be something that I could see be possible. But yeah, I just wanted to showcase this build. Hopefully you guys enjoyed what you've seen, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, take it easy.
Hello everyone and welcome to this build guide slash discussion about my aura slash armor stacking champion using Doriani's prototype. So for the first time in a while we're playing Trade League, so we're trying out some fun stuff. Just something that I've been waiting to do for this video is gamble some apothecary cards. So this is going to be my last ditch effort to get the Mage Blood this league. If this goes well, we'll have a Mage Blood. If it goes bad, we will be broke. I'm currently level 99. I'm trying to reach 100 for the first time this league. And I'm also trying to do 40 out of 40 for the first time this league. So it's gonna be fun. So without further ado, let's get into deleting some apothecary cards. Alright, so first click. Let's see. Okay, -1. Oof. Okay, we're back to 2. Still at 2. We're at 3. Okay, so we made profit. I'm too nervous to continue right now. I'm out of life juice. I'll buy some more and then I'll stitch this together once I buy some more. Alright, so let's talk about the build. I think the essential place to start is talking about Doriani's prototype, because this build leans heavily into the upside and it suffers from the downside of this armor. So first thing you should know is you deal no non-lightning damage, so you can't do any Trinity or anything like that. It's only pure lightning. The cool thing about this is we make the monsters in a close proximity of us to have the same lightning resistance as we do. The lower we can scale this, the more damage we will do, as it does not just reduce their resistance to 0, but it takes them into the negative, which makes them take more damage from our hits as well. So the one downside that we suffer from a lot on this build is we do not have lightning resistance mitigation against damage over time effects. This is stuff like Mana Siphoner, Shaper Beam. Sure, there's more I can't think of right now, but things that do lightning damage over time really wreck us. We are actually alright when it comes to taking lightning damage hits, since we're stacking as much armor as we can, and as you can see, this chest makes it so that our armor also applies to lightning damage taken from hits. So it's just the overtime portion that is the problem for us, and what basically is the only thing that leads us to dying while mapping. The essentials you need to get this build started is a Replica Dreamfeather, definitely for the armor stacking. You need Doriani's prototype. I would say you need the Alpha's Howl, and the other essential thing we need for this build is actually a jewel, the Melding of Flesh. It's just very useful because it's minus a massive amount of elemental resistances, which jumpstarts our big damage. So you can definitely do this build on a budget. I started off by just buying myself a Doriani's prototype unlinked. I bought myself a Alpha's Howl, and I got a Replica Dreamfeather, just one to start with. Just quickly on the Replica Dreamfeather, you're really looking for something that has 10 increased attack speed, because that scales very well with our other sources of attack speed. The other stats are not as important. Obviously, the better you can get this roll, the better it will be for you. The other thing that I bought was a Thunder Fist. These gloves are very strong as they provide us with a cheap 5-link with a big added lightning damage support. The only difficulty you will have is to color them. The most important gems would obviously be Smite, because we're using Smite. Multi-Strike. I would do Inspiration just to make the mana cost easier, and then Elemental Focus is probably the next one, that or the elemental damage of attacks. The reason that you will probably have difficulty for fitting 4 red gems in this is because this is an armor, not an armor gloves. It's a evasion and energy shield, so they'll be prone to roll green and blue sockets. But you can fix that using the sockets thing. So how this works is you try and get your gloves with, let's say, 2 red sockets to start with as the first 2 places, like these first 2. And you go 3 sockets. If you get a red, then good. If you don't, if you get a blue or a green, you start back to 2 sockets, 3 sockets, and you continue like that until you get a lucky roll. And then the 4 sockets, same, 3 and 4 until you get your gloves. That's a cheap way to get it, or this far into the league, you'll probably be able to just straight out buy the gloves with the correct socket colors for you. So it's very cheap to get started, but it has an extremely high ceiling. So the next important things you need is to start stacking auras. You need one of these, or a few of these actually, small cluster jewels with mana reservation efficiency of skills. You need to roll them with introspection. These you can on average buy if they're item level 83 or lower. You need above 71 for this to roll introspection. You can buy them for 20 chaos on average, and you can roll them by alt spamming, so they're not very expensive to make yourself. Buying them tends to be more expensive, but as you can see, you just need large cluster jewels, 8 passives. You can optimize this later with better stats for your build, and then just get introspection jewels as much as possible. This is the basic skill tree while we're at it. Since it is Trial of the Ancestors League, I made use of a bunch of tattoos. So most of the tattoos that I use is either increase armor or non-curse auras, which stacks our aura effects. The reason we want to stack aura so much is because we are using very high level alt qual, in this case determination. We're using grace, that's very high level, and wrath along with where is it, haste. The better we get this aura scaled, the better it will be for our defenses, so our armor goes way up. The reason we do haste
WSUP
and,
man.
sorry.
Hi Sully. Sully Veins. Thanks for following. Farming Mageblood. Almost done laughing face. How goes the farm man? How much more divs you need to finish? $15. O is close. If you have time. Want farm with us? Nah, thanks.
Yes? Greetings.
sorry, we do grace and domination is because iron reflexes give us our evasion to armor, and the reason that grace is so important is it has that stat. It gives 32% more evasion. The more evasion actually makes it so that scaling evasion is more effective in stacking armor than just scaling flat armor. It's not a big deal, don't get too hung up on the math. Just to note, if you do wonder why I'm not taking this cloth and chain, since it scales evasion and armor, this actually only benefits us once. So it's not like a double stat.
I can't do this just yet. You die rather well.
Hail.
I can't do this just yet.
Gotta grab 'em before someone else does, eh?
I can't do this just yet.
Gotta grab 'em before someone else does.
I believe in traveling light. I believe in traveling light. can't do this just yet. Can't do this just yet.